Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My name's Amanda. This is Milo. He's wanting some cuddles today. He did some good work. Earlier, my kids and I went to a new bookstore, and Milo is a service dog. I've got a video about him being a service dog on the channel. But anyway, yeah, he was interesting in that used bookstore because all the smells of everything. I guess he could smell all the previous readers on every single book, and he was just like on high alert. And it was really interesting because it was the first time we had been in that bookstore, and my son, who's also autistic, got really anxious because of the smell. And I don't know if it was the smell of the old books. It was down in the basement. Maybe there was like, some smells from the old building. But something about the smell made my son really anxious. And so Milo was like really on high alert to try to like calm him down because that's part of his job as being a service dog. But now he's being super cuddly and lazy. And even though he's my son's service dog, he does love to cuddle with everybody in the family. So anyway, welcome. If you are new here, my name is Amanda and I'm autistic, ADHD. I have total aphantasia and a memory disorder, which I do talk about all on this channel. And this is just like a vlog of my late diagnosis journey. And as of late, the last couple of weeks have been very up and down emotionally. My last video was pretty hard. Whew, but I'm feeling a lot better today. The outing with my kids was nice. It's a pretty sunny day. I'm really affected by the weather. The weather impacts my energy levels quite a bit, which I have to be very mindful for because I live in the Pacific Northwest and gray overcast days can zap my energy, and we have a lot of them up here. So I have to be mindful to remember to take my vitamin D, and I have one of those happy lights that's supposed to help with light deficiencies, I guess, with the sun. And so I sit in front of that as often as I can during the winter. But today is nice and sunny. We haven't quite entered into the fall gloomy days as of yet. So one of the things that I use, like, Milo, they can't quite see you. Let me see if I can adjust the camera a little bit more. There we go. There he is. He's like, I love belly rubs. He's upside down. We call him the noodle, and we call Watson the potato. So we have the noodle and the potato because he will like get into this tiny little, or sometimes pretzel. We'll call him pretzel. And this is one of him and Watson's toys. Anyway. Today I was kind of pondering my neurotypical mask. So you'll hear the term unmasking autism a lot. And I hate to go against the grain because that is the common thing. But it's really kind of like taking off my neurotypical mask and becoming my true autistic self. So one of the things that I've been doing this last year is, working out what my mask was and how it helped me show up in life. And in a previous video, I talked about how it's like my brain was running code, neurotypical.exe. And through that code, it would run through these parameters of be perfect, be a good girl, and put other people's comfort ahead of your own. And anything that I ever did in life pretty much filtered through these three things before I would say or take an action. Now, I also have the PDA, pathological demand avoidance profile of autism, and sometimes PDA, then I don't know enough about coding to keep this metaphor quiet going, but it's like it would run through those codes, and if that thing activated my PDA, then it didn't matter about the other aspects. then I wasn't going to do it because of the demand on my system would be incredibly too much, and therefore be a good girl, be perfect, and put others' comfort ahead of my own would not happen. There, because like most of the time, the majority of the time, I was always a very good daughter, very good student. I did not, make waves. But if something was asked of me that put my system into too much overstimulation or overdrive, PDA would activate and I would say no. And then the adults in my life would be really confused. They're like, Amanda, you always are good. You always do this. Why are you doing this one time? This doesn't make sense, blah, blah, blah. Most of the time they would let me get away with it because I was so good most of the time. They'd be like, oh, I guess she's just having a bad day, not, oh, it's undiagnosed autism. But anyway, that's another story. So I was kind of thinking about doing a video where I broke down each one of these things and kind of showed different ways these traits showed up, like be perfect, be a good girl, and put others' comfort ahead of your own. But I'm going to start with the last one. And I always say them in that order. I don't know if my brain would always put them in that order or not. But that's kind of how I always say it once I kind of like discovered this about myself. But to put others' comfort ahead of my own was so deeply embedded. And I think that this is going to be relatable to people who aren't even autistic. I think this put others' comfort ahead of your own relates to just sometimes if you are female, oftentimes you'll put others' comfort ahead of yourself just because of society training females to bow down to the patriarchy. I think also BIPOC communities often will put people's comfort ahead of their own. And it is a safety mechanism because when you put someone else's comfort ahead of your own, then that keeps you safe. And so autistic brains will often do this too as a survival mechanism. Now, each autistic person is individual and unique. Everybody's autistic mask is going to be different. Some people will relate to like the things that I'm saying here. Some people will be like, oh yeah, I definitely put other people's comfort ahead of my own, but I wasn't trying to ever be a perfectionist. Like that may not, you know what I mean? Like, because we're not a monolith. Each autistic person is unique, and based on how we were raised and our support system makes a huge difference in what mask was created. Because the masks were created by our brains so that we could assimilate into society with the least amount of stress on our nervous system. The mask was created to regulate our nervous system in a society that was not built to regulate an autistic person's nervous system. As you can see right here, I'm like doing like this with my hands because I don't have my fidget, and I always have a fidget when I talk. And that's one of Milo's tasks for Ira is sometimes he literally just like playing with his ears and stuff like that, which he loves. He becomes our big giant fidget toy. But I'm going to grab one real quick. I've got an entire drawer of fidgets. Okay, so I was thinking about the put others' comfort ahead of your own and different ways that it showed up in my life. And one small way is the fact that I pretty much have always been agnostic / atheist. I don't 100% I do call myself an atheist, but I'm also not like a hardcore like in your face atheist. I'm more of a pragmatic, like God and religion doesn't make sense to me, and I would need solid proof to believe in a God. So even though I'm like, I don't believe in God, but I also very much aware that we don't know everything about the universe. And so that's why I still reserve some amount of, yeah, okay, I'm kind of agnostic too. You can join me. Okay, Watson's can join me. Here's our potato. Milo left and now Watson's joining. Oh, no, never mind. Oh, come here, Watson. Yes, Milo was sitting right there. Now you are. Okay, so the reason why religion and putting other people's comfort ahead of your own is, especially in America, which the default is Christianity. I often had to pretend I was religious or just kind of go along or find ways to not make a big deal out of it, literally putting everyone in my life's comfort ahead of my own with their religion. Because if I tried to say what my beliefs were, they would feel threatened, which then would cause dysregulation and upset. And I would that's a big no. So I just always remained basically closeted atheist. And honestly, I've talked about it here and there in small forums on the internet occasionally and with some close friends, but I've never very publicly announced my atheism. Hello, internet. Because of the mask that I had to create to keep myself safe. One of the ways it shows up is when a Christian person, okay, let me back up really quick. I do respect religions. I respect that everybody has a right to believe things that make sense and bring them comfort and bring them joy and happiness. What I don't like is when other people force their religion onto you, especially when you've made it clear that that isn't something that you appreciate. I'm trying to think if I want to say anything about that. As a matter of fact, I love learning about and studying different religions. When I was a teenager, I really tried to get invited to different friends' churches because I really wanted to learn more about them. While I love learning about other people's faiths, it just isn't a right fit for me. And I respect other people's right to practice and believe them. One thing is, it is never, ever okay in disabled communities to see a disabled person and pray for the disability to go away. That is seen as harmful, pretty much across the board. Now, if that person is disabled and also religious and they ask you to pray with them, that's a whole different story. Where am I going with this? I feel like I need to start this video over. Okay, I'm not going to start the video over. Y'all know I like to just talk off the cuff and say what's on my mind. And that's my mask showing up. My mask is like, oh my gosh, I'm saying too much. I'm going to make some of my subscribers uncomfortable. I shouldn't be saying these things. And that's exactly the mask that was put in place my entire life to keep me safe. And again, it does show up a lot around religion. I always kept my mouth shut and quiet because I was a minority viewpoint, especially growing up in Texas. And when people talk about like an intention, like somebody will say, oh, I'm going to pray for you. Their intention is good. And I understand and see that intention, but it does take mental gymnastics, because like if I'm upset about something and somebody says, I'm going to pray for you, and I'm not religious, then I have to kind of do the mental gymnastics. Like, okay, I'm upset. They're not trying to trigger me, but I understand they're saying they want to pray for me because that's their way of showing empathy. Okay, good. Got it. Just like when somebody else is upset and they tell me a story, you know, like maybe they broke their wrist, and I tell a story like, yeah, oh my gosh, I know how hard that is. I broke my wrist when I was a kid and I was in a cast for so long, and yeah, I understand that is going to be so painful to have to work through. Well, a lot of times, neurotypical people, when an autistic person shares a relatable story like that, they see it as recentering the conversation to the neurotypical person. I mean, the person who shared the story. But autistic people, we often share a relatable story. That's how we empathize. Like, I understand what you're going through because I went through something similar, and are we on the same page? Like, it's a way for us to do like a vibe check. But it's seen from neurotypical people like we are trying to take over and make it about us. Same thing happens when you offer a prayer to somebody who isn't religious. If you are Christian, and I don't know if other religions do this, honestly. It's been encountered for me from Christians. I don't know about other people. And like I said, I've known lots of other religions, but they've never done this to me. It's usually Christians who'll come up to me and be like, oh, I'm going to pray for you. In my mind, that's recentering it. That's making you comfortable because that's your way to show empathy. But I do understand that is your way of showing empathy. Just like I need a neurotypical person to understand that when I share a relatable story, that's my way of showing empathy. So basically, like, further conversation is what is really needed around this. Like, I've heard some people say, you know, you just can't even sympathize with anybody. You can't have conversations. No, that's the whole point. The point is to continue to have conversations, like to be able to not have to mask and be like, hey, you know, I'm really upset and really sad, and I understand that prayer helps you, and I appreciate that, but it doesn't help me. What would really help for me is for you just to kind of like be here with me and let me cry, or whatever I needed to do. But what happens is when they say, oh, I'm going to pray for you, that just shuts me down because I feel like I have to mask, because I can't say, oh, your prayer isn't helpful for me. Because if I say that, I'm the bad person now. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's now recentered to them. They are now insulted and offended that I didn't want their prayer, even though the original upset was for me. And again, it's like I'm seeing both sides of the problem. Like, me sharing a relatable story, if that doesn't help them, then they see it as me recentering the conversation. So they need to say that. They need to be able to say, oh, well, when you talk about your injury, then that's making me not feel good. Then it's like, okay, well, I'm sorry, what do you need? And it does take more work. That's the problem. People will be like, oh my gosh, that's just more work. Well, yes, it is more work, but in the end, you have closer connections. You have people who aren't faking it till they make it. You have legitimate, authenticity between people, and it's worth the work, really. It takes time to know what is going to make a difference for another person. But when you do make that difference, that was your ultimate goal to begin with. And a side note, because I do get a lot of people in my comments saying that, you know, they're sending me prayers, they're praying for me, especially on the videos where I've had a hard day. And I do appreciate your intention. And I do understand that you are wanting and showing support for me in those moments. And I don't want to take away from that. But I am just having an open conversation. And for one thing, there's no way for you to have known that those words don't bring me comfort, because I have not talked about being atheist. I have maybe here and there in a couple comments, but overall, in general, I have not. And that is partially because, again, masking, but there's some close family members that it would hurt them if I was atheist. And again, it's recentering to them. It hurts their feelings that I don't believe in their God. And so I'm just done pretending and hiding and masking. And I am always going to lead with kindness, but I'm tired of putting other people's comfort ahead of my own as my default way of being. Sometimes it is appropriate to put other people's comfort ahead of my own. When my child is crying and upset and having a bad day and I'm not feeling good, I'm going to set my not feeling good aside and take care of my kid. If, I have, I could give lots more examples, but there are times where it is ultimately the appropriate time to set your comfort aside. But as your default way of living your entire life, where every single action that you do and breathe and speak is always going to put the other person's comfort ahead of your own comfort, then that is not showing respect to yourself. And putting your own comfort first sometimes is self-care. So I'm going to insert this in right before I do my goodbye, because I left off a huge part that I'm going to talk about in this video. It was a little bit hard for me to film this one, and because the subject matter can be so touchy and I don't want to disrespect anyone's beliefs. That is super important to me. Hold on, I put my fidget up. But I did want to mention this because it's just a fascinating fact to me that there are a lot of autistic people who are agnostic and atheist, and there have been some studies done on it. And so I think that there are a lot of autistic people who do like religion because they like the rituals, they like the routine, they like the predictability about religion. And, if you were raised in a religious household, a lot of times you just kind of follow in those footsteps. But there are a lot of autistic people who really are atheists because we need that logical proof. Faith doesn't really click with our brains a lot of times. So that's why I think you'll find a lot more on agnostic and agnostic atheist autistics. And I found a research paper that was done, I think it was 2012. Now, one of the problems I had, I will link it down below. One of the problems I have with it is they talk about high functioning autism, which we now do not use functioning labels. So now we would say low support needs autism, but there are some really interesting graphs showing that the level of atheist and autistic adults is a lot higher than neurotypical people. And my brain just was like, oh, this is so fascinating. I love studying all things about religion. So anyway, I just wanted to add this little tidbit in here. I want to go down the rabbit hole of researching it more. I just kind of scratched the surface of it this morning, but yeah. All right, bye. Whew, this was a heavy one, guys. Thank you. Yeah, I think I'm going to do ones on the perfectionism and the good girl. I have talked about all these, you know, on and off in the videos, but like every time that I bring a video, I always, you know, bring up some new points and everything. And plus I've always got new subscribers joining me. So thank you so much for subscribing. If you are one of my subscribers, I appreciate it so much. And until the next one, bye.